I think good sound design is super subtle, right? Hopefully you don't even realize it's really manipulating your emotions towards the film.
The equipment's not the limiting factor anymore. Do something cool.
In fact, I've been shooting handheld towards the end of last year and through this year. I think it kind of fills that same gap of what we were calling like lazy filmmaking.
I think you mean edgy.
Yeah, edgy.
You're just not cool enough for it, Bobby?
Yeah, I just don't understand it.
The overall impression we have from watching these films, guys, is like, I feel like the industry is going to another level.
Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wedding Film School show. My name's Jared and we're here, not live, we're here recording, kind of live, here in Vegas for WPPI. It's going to be an awesome week. We're going to be doing some awesome interviews, so make sure you tune in and check this series of interviews out. But we wanted to do one because we have Bobby here live in person in the house.
It's live. It's
yes.
live because we're all together.
Yeah, it's live because we're all here in person, which
this is my
this
badge.
is the first.
This is my badge.
Oh, I don't have my badge.
I wanted to keep it on just to prove I'm at WPPI.
Yeah.
If this gaudy, actually beautiful room here at the Wynn doesn't tell you that we're at Vegas, this will definitely tell you.
Yes, because obviously we couldn't open our windows to show you the beautiful mountains of Vegas, so Jason had to wear his lanyard.
Which I'll take off now because it's making a noise.
I was going to say,
yeah, you're gonna love that audio. But guys, we have Bobby here today, and we wanted to just kind of have a conversation and talk about some of the trends really in the industry that are happening. I think this is always a time where like Jason and I kind of look at our work and we're like, what are the industry trends? Like, what are people doing? What did people do last year with COVID weddings? And just where is our whole industry going? It's a time to kind of, take a deep breath and look at what everyone else is doing.
It's like almost like a revival, right? Of
Yeah.
the whole thing of the wedding industry is like, and I'm noticing people are, I think, mostly positive, right? People I feel like are going at this, like you can tell like people are excited to get back to work and inspired, and they were just, maybe we needed a break, who knows?
It's true.
And this was somewhat inspired by this morning, right? I mean, we were watching some of the live reviews, the WPPI reviews of films.
They're contests.
Yeah, sorry, contests, and just kind of, you can sit in on that. And so looking at just things that we were seeing in that, even like consistently trends,
Between the stuff we do, Wedding Film School Live, and seeing that, and of course being part of Facebook groups, I think we're noticing some trends, and we're noticing some things. So today we're going to be
good and bad.
Yeah. So today we're going to say one trend we love, one trend we hate, from I would say the newly reinvigorated wedding industry. But before we get into it, I was just wanted to point out that no matter what we say, I think the overall impression we have from watching these films, guys, is like, I feel like the industry is going to another level.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a trend, but
it could be a trend. We can say that. Yeah.
Bonus trend.
Yeah.
I would
bonus
say
trend that we like.
The last time we were here, Jay, Bobby, this is your first time. The last time we were here was
2 years
literally
ago now.
right before COVID really hit.
A week,
it was
the week before.
It was the end of February 2020. And so I would say since we were here in Vegas then to what the industry is doing now, there's definitely some I would say it's a trend of quality, really. You see kind of the filmmakers that people are trying to replicate some of their maybe editing practices, maybe the cameras that they're using, techniques that they're using. So, I think what we were noticing in these films were like, hey, I'm seeing a lot more of this. I'm seeing a lot of people try to do this, and this. And these are really good filmmakers. Yeah. Like the quality, the level of just expertise and mastery that filmmakers that I hadn't even heard of before are producing is really taken to the next level. So
why don't we get into the trends really quick, and we'll each start with one trend we love, one trend. Let's start, what do you want to do? Love or hate first?
Well, mine is kind of, two sides of the same coin a little bit. And
why don't we?
but mine is the best one. So why don't we start with mine
We'll
first?
start with yours.
Because So I'm noticing a lot of people, and this was a couple of years ago, but now I'm seeing it just much more widespread, is the use of Foley work, sound effects, and kind of audio engineering, right?
Would you call it sound design?
Sound design, yeah. I would say you're seeing it a lot more, and I think it's because people like Alex, people like Henry have really kind of mastered it and introduced the wedding world to these sound effects, which just kind of brings films to the next level. So you're seeing a lot of other people start to emulate some of that work, which can be really good, but at the same time,
So that's
when done
one
poorly,
trend you love? Or
that's one trend I love. I do love it because I think when you use it really well, it takes the film to
It
the
just
next
elevates
level.
a film to the next level. When there's thoughtful, intentional, tasteful
Yes.
sound design.
And do you
Yes.
guys, like, I'm trying to think back. Obviously, you mentioned Henry and Alex
Yep.
as two big contributors to that kind of movement. I'm trying to think, like, before them, like, even the big name people, I remember, 5-10 years ago or whatever, like, I mean, I guess Henry and Alex were doing it then too, but maybe weren't as well known or something.
Henry wasn't
like,
even making films.
Or
10
yeah,
years
maybe
ago.
Henry wasn't. But, like, I don't remember, or let's say 10 years ago, right? Like, the big names that I remember from then, I don't remember sound designing any of them.
No,
Yeah.
I actually
Like,
think...
I don't think it was a thing.
I think, because you still hear, like, there's always, like, a stream of people that are like, you need a good story. And what they mean is lots of sound bites.
Yes.
And so anything that's not organic from the day is like,
Yeah.
it's not real. And, like, there's that
And
person.
yeah, I remember, like, ambient audio.
Yes.
Like, the blow dryer or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
With the hair salon. But, like, I don't remember, like, crafted
Cinematic sound design.
Yep, like
Music
intentional.
video, commercial, like Hollywood style sound design.
Yep.
Which obviously
it.
it's not for everyone, but I would agree with you that, like, I think the industry as a whole is now like, how do we mic people? Okay, we know how to do that. How do we capture audio from a sound system? Most people know how to do that. Like, how do we not blow out the audio from the sound system? Most people, like, I think the industry as a whole has a, like, cumulative core
Understanding.
competency of capturing event audio. And now they're like, do you include, because I might, like, break this, but in terms of, like, what you're hearing and enjoying, obviously there's sound design, like sound effects, including, I would include ambient audio in that. Using sound as part of your storytelling. Of course, sound clips, the old school sound design. But would you include mixing well as part of that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think what you're able to do now is a lot more complicated due to gear and due to what's out there.
Even the audio tools are so much more accessible, even in
Yeah.
post-production.
Yep. And then you have masters like Ryan Coda teaching us how to do things a lot better. So I think the wedding film industry has definitely paid more attention to that side of things. And I think you're right. It used to just be, sound design was just how much sound bites you incorporate in your film and how they play with each other.
I like music video
And that
style.
was considered-
I like narrative style.
That was considered sound design, and yeah. I
Well, that was
think-
like the extent of it, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and now it's a lot more thought out, and what is really, I think good sound design is super subtle, right? Hopefully you don't even realize it's really manipulating your emotions towards the film, right? And when it's done well, you hardly notice it.
Well, and it's not just like show a picture of a crow, make a crow sound.
Yeah, no.
It's like
Like
there's a whoosh.
the use of risers and that kind of stuff in the background to like elevate
Or even
whatever point you're trying to make in a film.
Making a custom score
Yep.
using stems, like syncing songs together, keeping like
Yep.
the way we're working with music is a part of it too.
Yep, definitely. But and as a part of that same kind of coin, I would say a trend that I noticed today was the downside of that.
So this is the trend you hate.
This is the trend that I hate. I'm starting to hate a little bit, which is, you see a waterfall or whatever, and it's just like so over the top, and obviously not the sound effect that was
In
actually.
your face, you're like beat over the head with it.
Exactly. That's what I said. It was that while I was watching some of these films, I felt like I was like being beat over the head with just sound effects, and it was like not very. When you watch a film, you don't want to be taken out of the film to be like, that's not real.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
Yeah.
So, like, what is this person thinking?
What do you think that's some of like? Do you think that's more I mean, obviously we talked about everything that goes into it, but so it's not the effects itself, but
Yeah.
it's probably the mixing more because it's too loud.
Yes.
It's starting and ending
Yes.
with the exact clip. As long as you see the waterfall, you hear it, and there's no
Yeah.
back end or front end of that.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, it is. I think it is mixing. I think you're
Yeah.
right. I think if honestly, if they were like
and probably
literally
poor decision making in general, but
yeah, if it was half the volume and you hardly noticed it, but it made you feel like you were there a little bit, choosing sound bites, I think that's important. But also, what does the mix feel like? I think just mixing in general is hard for videographers.
Yeah.
I think the thing I notice within the vein of poor sound design is when they can't decide first and foremost, is this surreal or ultra real, right? So surrealism can actually, you can do a lot more with like non-matching sounds. It's like if you just rewind your film and you go and you make a noise like that, you're not trying to make the noise of your film rewinding. You're just trying to make a feeling of rewinding.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you show a picture of a giant waterfall and then clearly the soundbite is from a trickling fountain,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like they have so it's like you're trying to do something realistic. You're trying to make me feel like I hear the fountain. You're not trying to just put a riser in.
Yeah.
Or do
I like
some-
that. That's two like very different.
It's like that's what bothers me
Goals,
is if I see a bird, I'm like, that's not the sound that I was watching one shot today. It was a bike going down a road,
Yeah.
and they had a sound effect.
It's like
It was like tink, tink. It was like just clearly some post-production sound effect that they thought matched.
Yeah.
And they did two things wrong. The first was the sound was wrong. There's three, I guess. The second was that it was too loud. The third was that they did not make it fade out as it got farther away from the camera.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was like that right there was a good idea executed poorly. So once you start,
What's just slapped on.
yeah, it's like if you're gonna get into sound design, you have to start thinking of space,
Yeah.
distance, like something like there's no reverb.
Yeah.
There's no sense of the room you're in. So like it's very advanced.
Yeah.
And
It
like
is.
when you start getting into especially trying to imitate the noise of certain things, and like you can get away with like a subtle like, say you like didn't capture, you're doing a shot of a golf, like the groom hitting a golf ball with his bros.
A golf.
And
Doing a
like,
shot of a
I'm
golf.
doing a shot of a golf.
I hope I get to
What
do
would that
some.
even
back,
be?
I have to do
A
shot
Gulf of Mexico?
Shot of a golf.
I hope I get to do some shot of a golf later this week. Yeah.
The Gulf of Mexico. No, you're doing a shot of someone swinging a golf club. They hit the golf ball, and the thing goes, it makes a whoosh click sound. Does that have to be super well perfect? No, especially if it's not too loud.
Yeah.
When you start showing very complex sounds, like water, you're dealing with textures of it. What is it hitting? Is it hitting more
How big
water?
is it? How
Is it
powerful
hitting
is it?
rocks? How much water? How big are the droplets? And I see like people where I'm like, this is a little over your head. You should have just go put your camera next to it and recorded that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's two things though that I would say kind of on that topic is one, with it being newer, right? Like most people, even like I don't do a whole lot of sound design in my films. I've started to a little bit more, but like, so I think there is some amount of that where it's like, look, this is a newer concept in wedding films and people are figuring it out.
Yes.
So I think like bad is still bad, but that is like, I think why it's bad is
Well,
it's just newer for people.
That leads me into my trends because I think what you're really bringing up is something that I love. One trend I love
Yes.
is the accessibility to better equipment, cheaper solutions, whether it be in audio post-production. I mean, like we're looking here, we're recording this on a Mix Pre 3. This is $600. This thing is incredible. It's like a whole studio that you carry around with you.
Yeah.
We have these great cameras, like the amount of stuff that it's just so much easier to make really great work. And I feel like people are finally taking advantage of that and producing, like pushing the boundaries a little bit. So we're starting to see like the equipment get out of the way and people are starting to try to be creative again. Because like they're not showing up and going like, crap, how do I even pull this off? This wedding is going to be so hard, and they're just kind of barely getting through the wedding day, and it's pretty good, but the equipment is limiting them and it's causing them so much distraction. They can't just create because the equipment gets in the way. And I think we're at a place now where I'm starting to see like, because a lot of people aren't that technical. They're fine,
Yeah.
but that's not their main skill. They're not like at the core. They're not just technicians. They don't love equipment the way I do, where I'm going to dig into every menu. I want to know everything back and front. They don't want to do that. They want to work with people. They want to do portraiture, whatever it is that they want to do. And I feel like it's a really cool thing. Like, and I think the films that we saw today are kind of evidence of that.
Yeah.
Like people just showing up and getting to make beautiful work with less. The equipment's not a hindrance anymore.
Yeah. I think one of the positive sides to equipment making our job a lot easier is just the flood of new people that we've seen come into the wedding filmmaking industry, whether it's photographers or whether it's just people picking up a camera and just like, hey, I've always been creative, I want to do this.
Yep.
Now they have the gear and the tools that make it so much easier than it was 10 years ago. Bobby, you started 17 years ago? Like
15, yeah.
15 years ago? Like how hard was it
Remember
working
how hard
Final
it
Cut
was?
Pro
Oh, so
X
hard.
No,
or 7?
Let me
7,
just
yeah, it
like
was
back in the
outline
day.
how hard it was for people. Like, because I think you're making a good point. It's like people who would have otherwise been intimidated, and rightfully so, are able to come and share their voice.
Yep.
And so you're in the works that they're doing is acceptable to great, right? With so much less work. When Jared and I first started wedding filmmaking, and many people will never remember this day, we actually had, what was it, a 12-minute record time?
Yeah.
Yep.
5D
12
Mark
minute,
II.
12-minute record times
Yeah.
on 5D Mark IIs. We would
We'd have to rotate.
set a
Keep
timer,
on and watch.
Yep.
and we'd run around the room and go on a cycle.
Yeah.
We had no gimbals, so we had none of that.
Yeah.
We-
I think I had a steady cam for a
We
little
had
bit.
no autofocus, so we would
Yeah,
have
no
to.
autofocus.
We would have to
gimbals were kinda
set.
pointless anyway.
So if we did like we would try to get crazy and do some of this stuff, but all you have to do is
focus.
set everything to infinity focus and like
We had a Kessler crane.
yeah.
Yep. I
Like-
still have mine.
Yeah.
I think we do too.
But
yeah.
like, audio hasn't really changed that much, to be honest. Now they've 32, but I don't
I
really.
think there's some things that are easier now. Like, because before it was all like the H4n. And
But
that
yeah,
didn't
like,
take
that's-
line levels. You had to have an attenuator. Which
yeah,
is
do you
still, I mean, I
remember
don't know.
do you remember the
I think
battery
I
battery
had way
life on the
more audio
H4n?
issues 10 years ago than I do now, and I don't know if that's gear related or my.
I think it's gear related. Remember the
Probably
H4n?
is.
When you would record it on the H4n, the battery life was awful on it, and then when it would die, it would corrupt your file.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
that's
it
true.
will
Yeah.
close your file and then turn off. Like
Yeah.
it's just a little
But
thing.
like all these things, there was no lighting you could really bring until the like dado light came out
Yeah.
and like, so for the first like 4 years of my career, we had no lights.
yeah,
We would never light anyone. So maybe more, who knows? But regardless, my point is only to say, we made acceptable work with what we were able to work with at the
Yeah.
time. It was so hard. You had to, like when people, I literally see people and they're like, I'm still working on manual focusing. And I kind of laugh at the person because I'm like, come on. Like, but then I'm looking and I'm like, this person is never manually focused.
Yeah.
And their films are pretty good.
Yep.
And they don't even know how to do this skill that I consider to be basic and was essential.
Yeah.
And so that leads into the thing I hate, which is lazy filmmaking because it's so easy.
Yeah.
I see a trend of like, come on, the equipment's no longer a hindrance. The equipment's not the limiting factor anymore. Like, do something cool. Like I shot a film the other day where they sent me the wrong freaking equipment to my rig. So I shot the whole thing on some old Canons last Saturday. And the limitations were real. Like I remember like going like, I cannot shoot as good
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
shoot the same stuff. I mean, it's fine. It was fine. But like I look back and I'm like, I'm starting to think about the films I've been making this year and some of the things I've been able to do with better equipment that I've always wanted to do. And I feel like we're making better films this year than we ever have because we've upgraded our cameras. And I think if the industry, and I think they are responding, but I will say I've noticed like a trend of just like the guy who walks around in the gimbal all day.
Yep.
You know,
Definitely gonna
Do you
touch on
think
that.
do you think the laziness is more on the shooting side or more on the editing side, or both?
probably both. Probably both. I think mainly the shooting side is what I noticed the most because I feel like some people just aren't good editors, so I'm not sure if they're lazy or not. Because editing
Yeah,
is
it's hard to know. Yeah, it's hard to know like where they're at, because like you can see like, hey, you were on the gimbal all day. You
Yeah.
never switched your lenses, whatever.
and
Whereas
maybe
with
they're
the
just
edit,
in love.
it
Maybe
might be
lazy
out.
is the wrong word. Like I would call it lazy filmmaking, but
It's
maybe
lazy filmmaking, but it's not because they're lazy. It's because they're. I mean, they might choose that and defend that.
So lazy might not be the best word for it because it might be that they're just not that skilled. Maybe
Yeah.
they're just like really excited about the
Yeah.
gimbal.
I mean, I think we call it lazy from the term lazy filmmaking.
The films,
but
they end up being not what they could be.
yeah,
Like I feel like it's easier to make a good film. I love that. And there are more good films, and I love that.
yeah,
Because what that means for us financially as artists and as professionals is that we get to charge more for our work. More people will see it and love it, and it will just break stereotypes, all that. As an artist, because financially speaking, the stuff is good enough. The lazy films are probably 10 times better than they would have been 10 years ago.
oh yeah.
So it's hard for me to get too critical because I'm sure a lot of these people love these films. But as an artist, I look at it and I'm like, if you're shooting with this Canon R5, great, you did some gimbal work. Why didn't you adapt and do a little handheld in the appropriate moment? Or why didn't you switch your lenses ever? Or why didn't you
Yeah.
just things that I know this film could have been so much cooler if they would have actually been really thoughtful.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you feel about that, Jared, but I've noticed, I do notice that even in today's edits, I was like, half of those edits were, I won't say who, but they're just rip-offs of one other person in our industry.
Yeah, I would say the thing that I notice, and if we're talking about like laziness, and again, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but like a lot of times I'll just see like a wobble of a camera move at the end of the shot, and I'm like, why don't you just T-shift that over a little bit?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has to do with like just not knowing that that's a bad shot and that they should get rid of that extra camera wobble at the end of the shot, or like, do you notice that a lot?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, why don't you
We
just
call
like-
that out a lot, I feel like, on
on
our
the-
reviews.
yeah,
There are
definitely.
these things that like, because the gear is so good, and this is like specifically the thing I hate, and the trend I hate is the gear being so good that people don't need to get that good to pull
Yeah.
out a pretty good product. So you're noticing like very basic crap that they can't do properly.
Yeah.
Like and like it's good enough to sell,
because
but
they
it's like
never had to deal with that in a lot
No,
of ways. Like
yeah.
manual like if you're missing focus, it's like, well, it's because you've had a camera that's had decent autofocus your entire career.
I'll see people with pretty good films, and then they'll have a film like a bad day, and they'll submit it, and I'm like, your white balance is all over the place. What the heck?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I'm not that good at that.
We're being thrown into harder situations where it's like, hey, you could shoot your first 10 weddings at a nice venue with good light and
We sound like
no real
old men,
issues.
like
It-
old.
I know.
I was gonna
but-
say like this subject is hard for me to really nail down because people's experience level is all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's like someone who's just starting in the industry, like I don't want to crush that person and be like, you're lazy, like
Yeah.
get
No,
better.
I think we've said lazy. I don't think it's the right word.
Yeah.
But
I do feel like, you know, if you're starting out, like certain people today scored really well because they just were very consistent and they were professional.
Yeah.
Like they were great at the shots they were getting, and it wasn't anything over the top. They didn't have to be Alex Douglas with their edits, but they just put together a really solid film. And
Yeah.
that's what I would say a lot of us should be working towards, is just excellence in the basics, right?
Well, that was, I mean, I feel like, didn't they go around, they asked everybody, I think Henry was the one who said, like, it was like one thing that you would tell a filmmaker,
Yeah.
period, not any specific filmmaker. And
Yep.
his was that it was better to execute a basic idea
Yeah.
extremely well
Yep.
than to execute a difficult idea in, like, mediocrity.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
I don't know the exact word.
And I think that can go back to the
and
audio
I think that
engineering.
is
Yeah.
really what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. Is like I see these things where it's like the gimbal moves are all over. Like there could be some really great stuff because the gear allows them
Yep.
to, and they're like, yeah, and they're all
It's
excited.
almost more like polarizing.
They're
Where
ex-
instead of being solid and consistent throughout, you have this like some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have like a second camera where the colors don't match at all.
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
something random. where it's like,
They're really excited about the sexy things and they don't do their fundamentals. And maybe that's what I mean by lazy filmmaking is like we're kind of skipping because the cameras are so good, they don't force you to learn fundamentals. And then you don't have to actually learn how to tell good stories because you have a drone and you don't have to. And I think like the industry will reject that, by the way. And I think like you'll start to see a strata, this is actually probably a good thing. Bonus thing I love. What will actually end up happening is like the gear will start to, everyone's films will look good, but some people's films will be good.
yeah.
And the things that will be good will give you the ability to charge even more, and that's great.
I think I see what you're saying because like I remember when we first got good gear, right? We've got an L series lens with Canon, 50 millimeter 1.2, and we were like, this is a great lens, and we say it all the time. Like we would shoot like Elf on the Shelf, like be like super 1.2 depth of field, and be like, this is a good shot.
So cinema.
So
Well, it's
cinematic
like-
looking, and you're like, this is great because I can do this with a piece of gear. But that was lazy of us because it doesn't tell a good story. It's like we let the piece of gear be the thing that we're excited about and not the actual storytelling.
Well, I think
right?
it's what did differentiate for a time. Like I think we're going in this cycle where I think 15 years ago, let's say, you were separating yourself by telling a story because a lot of people were only doing music videos.
Yep.
Or
music video
just
style,
weird 50
or
minute.
just weird, like shoulder, like old school, right? So this wave of people came in, they used audio, they used whatever, they told stories, and then all of a sudden everybody started doing that a couple years later. And then the thing that set you apart was, hey, there's like, I can make a video gear, like the Canon T2i and the Nifty 50 and stuff like that. And then there's like, I'm making very cinematic, like I'm making very nice, like
Probably
gear
the first
set you
wave,
apart.
the first wave of gimbal people.
Yeah, who could, like
the
all
first-
that stuff, like that, it set you apart.
Yep.
And now, because gear has gotten so cheap,
We're
we're back to where kind of all that gear is kind of the same level again. Doesn't matter if you're shooting Sony or Panasonic or Fuji or Canon or Nikon or whatever. We've seen good films with all of them. We've seen bad films with all of them. And now what's going to set you apart again is
Being
that
actually
story
good.
and being a good film.
But I do think I hate the trend where I talk to someone and they don't know how to manually focus. They don't know how to white balance their cameras. They don't. It's just like I hope we can be a part of helping that improve.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
I look at that and
Speaking of that,
yes.
my trend that I like is not really with films themselves, but you said, I hope that we can be a part of helping people make better films, whatever. So my thing that I really like with this industry right now is like, I feel like this community of like wedding filmmakers is at like that sweet spot where it's just like, like there's always things that can be better or we can do better or whatever, but like there are, a good amount of like solid people, men and women, who are educating in the industry. We have, I think there's like this just bond of people like, like we have like wedding filmmakers who are friends.
Yeah.
Or like we were nobody to each other for a while. Now we're friends.
Yeah.
And now we're doing this together. And so like, there's like this community aspect that just, I feel like wasn't as much there. And now, wedding filmmaking is not a big, like, it's not a big group of people, especially doing it like, full time or anything like that. As you introduce more stipulations, it gets smaller and smaller. Yep. But it is bigger than it was. I mean, way more weddings have it, which is nice. So I think like, now we're at that number, even though it's still very small and there is that really small, like tight-knit community feel to it. We also are at that number where we can have like, we have Vision Quest. We have like there are things built for wedding filmmakers.
Yeah, the industry is moving just beyond just and this is great, by the way, so it's not a knock on this, but like we had one event, the Ray Roman workshop, or like
still motion went around for
bit. Those are cool things. And now it's more like we have like a bunch of people.
There are options
who are known. Then of course there's like people who they're not necessarily educators, right? Yeah. But they're people we all know the people on the forums and the boards and like people are actually forming real relationships.
Yes.
So you can join this community and actually glob onto not just information or inspiration, but you can glob onto relationships.
Yeah.
And I think
Well, I think people are just way more open right now too, and some of that might be like because the gear is all like there are a lot of things that have changed where I wouldn't say that it was ever like hyper cutthroat, but I think there is more community aspect to it now than there ever was.
Yeah, I think everyone likes each other in this industry a lot. I do love seeing the different branches of wedding filmmakers now. Like, there's a really great like women's wedding filmmaker group on Facebook where they just talk about like
We've
this
heard.
is a
We're
safe
not,
place.
we're not
We
members.
haven't seen for ourselves. We
We're
haven't
not
been
members.
invited. But,
They won't let us in.
yeah, but there are really good groups like How to Film Weddings is a good community.
The
good group.
WPPI crew is a crew.
There's a
You know,
crew,
the
yep,
Vision
yep.
Quest crew,
Vision
yeah.
Quest crew, the Venture crew. Like there are certain
What's Sarah
adventure
and Rick
type
do
people. Yeah.
with their wedding film retreat.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
stuff like
communities that you
There's-
can latch onto, and like I remember when we first were starting in the industry, Jason, like we were like, yeah, we don't know anyone, we don't really care to know anyone because there's no one I would really want to know. It was like Ray Roman, and then I saw Ray Roman's workshop, and I was like, dude, he is like godlike.
No way we could ever
no
afford
way I
that.
could ever, I don't even know if I would feel comfortable going to that workshop. And now it's like Ray Roman calls Jay all the time, and just like, like Ray calls Jay, Alex is calling us, and they have bouncing ideas. It's just like, it's a really good community, and it's just like, hey, we're actually a bunch of friends, and like literally, these are people that we didn't know Bobby 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So
If I get a
People
random
of each other.
of
That
each
was
other,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah, there's like real love and real respect,
Yeah.
and I think that's creating just good vibes, which
Yep.
is always good,
Yep.
but better films.
And yes, it's better films ultimately, and it's like it's very good in what can be a very lonely career path.
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, when I see, between getting drunk calls from certain people who will remain nameless, or more than a few people have called me, or like getting a random text from Sharon, she'll be like, "I'm sorry, I haven't texted you in a while. How are you?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like,
It's nice to have that.
it's nice to have friends, and like I think we pointed out to say we're all human beings,
Yep.
and if you want to get involved in a community, I feel like at one point I'd be like, wedding filmmaker. When we first started wanting to do wedding pros, we had the premise that wedding filmmakers were weird, and we had to help them. Like we were like, we need to start this thing because these
Yeah.
people have no social skills, and they're just weird, and they're killing their careers by being weird. I still feel like we tend to skew weird, but I think the more I get to know these people, the more I'm like, well, some are still weird, of course, but many of these people are wonderful.
Yeah.
Very nice people, and actually like really cool to hang out with, and
Like friends.
like friends, and it's just cool. And so I think that is a really cool trend, and I'm glad you pointed that out because it's not just about the technical side. We're human beings.
So if you're at home and you're watching this and you're like, oh, I could never be friends with Bobby Burns,
You can be.
you can be.
I've got news for you.
All you have
but
to do.
wait, there's more. You
I
can
know.
also be friends with Jay and Jared.
It's as easy as being involved at a Facebook
yeah,
group.
for sure.
Like
Yeah.
it's as easy as that, and just like,
be a
the people
person.
that contribute to the community get the most out of it.
Yeah,
It's
and
just
it
how-
might
it's how it
be,
is with
by
anything.
the way, that might change as the industry evolves. Like this
Yeah.
is a sweet spot to get involved because like my guess would be like, if you want to hang out with KT Mary, that's not going to go so well for you.
Yeah.
Like these people, as the industries develop and people monetize their relationships, they start to figure out like, oh, you want me to talk to you? You have to buy account. I mean, I'm not quite there, but like with how busy I am, like I can imagine that is where we start heading. I don't think that's bad because that gives people at the top more ways to make a living besides just shooting. But I think if you want to get involved, right now is a perfect time.
Yep, for sure.
And to your point, Bobby, like at the end of the day, it makes you a better filmmaker. I know for me personally, I'm such a better filmmaker after having conversations,
inspiration
intimate
and
conversations
conversation.
with
I mean, we
filmmakers
all
who
said
are
that about Vision
so
Quest.
much better than me. So much better than me. Yeah, Vision Quest was a huge place that I was just like, oh my God, these people are amazing. How do you do this? How and just getting into their heads.
Mind meld.
Yeah, like and
Well,
figuring
not
things
everybody-
out.
Pour some cocktails.
You can't make excuses when you realize someone else isn't making that same excuse.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, I couldn't do that better because of this, and this other person's like, I had to nail that shot of the waiter putting the food down, so I waited there for 15, and it's like, yeah, I guess I could have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and like that person's making more than me, and they're doing it because they actually care enough about every one of their shots. Like, it's pretty cool. So what's the trend that you hate?
Trend
Bobby?
I hate, so somewhat quickly here, because it is kind of like piggybacking off of yours a little bit. I really don't like, I guess it's lazy filmmaking, but I have a few. Hold on, let me see, what do I want to do? Would you guys rather I do handheld or would you rather do slow motion?
Handheld. We could. We'll tag on
Okay.
slow motion. At the
Okay.
end. So Bobby, what's the trend that you hate?
Yeah, so one of the trends that I really hate, and I definitely want to like dive into it or explain it a little bit, is handheld filmmaking, because I don't inherently dislike handheld. In fact, I've been shooting handheld the last, like towards the end of last year and through this year, at least one of my cameras. But I think it kind of fills that same gap of what we were calling like lazy filmmaking, where there can be there's two sides
I
of
think
it.
you mean edgy.
Yeah, edgy.
You're just not
exactly.
cool enough for it,
Well,
Bobby.
yeah, I just don't understand it. That must be the issue. But I think like there is very, very good handheld filmmaking. I used to just across the board hate handheld shots, and now I don't mind them, and I see like I've seen them used so well. But there's still really bad handheld, where you're just like, I'm gonna shoot handheld because I want to, which I guess is fine, but like if there's no purpose behind it and you're not doing it well, it's just like,
Well, like it's a function of IBIS.
Yeah.
exactly.
If you don't know
Now
what that
that
is,
my camera is image stabilization, so I can do
in
whatever
body
I want.
image stabilization.
And you can
can
it's
do
made
it
way
now.
better. But
Yeah.
there's still people. There's people relying on that to replace a gimbal and doing gimbal moves with that, and it just looks like it just looks bad.
It's
always.
not good.
It never looks good to me.
Yeah, I have a similar, in terms of the handheld thing, it's a little different angle of what I hate about it, which is like, first of all, the people who do it all the time will be the first ones to tell you they do it all the time. So I'm like, oh wow, you're awesome, you shoot handheld. Oh, all handheld, all handheld. Hey, who in this group shoots all handheld? It's like, guys. But that's aside. In terms of the films it produces, what I don't like is that those people cannot, if you're shooting handheld all the time, and I'm sure there's someone who's going to tell me, I do 85 mil all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot my 70-200 handheld.
Yeah.
Actually, my second shooter on that BTS was 70-200 handheld.
No, I've
But-
done 7200 handheld, and you can do it,
Yeah.
but like
But that's not typical.
you tend to find a 35 millimeter
Yep.
focal length all day,
Yep.
and you have all these films that look exactly alike, and like the edits look.
Well, it's like the shots within them.
They can't even produce like any dynamics in their film because there's no compression, there's no bokeh, they're not dreamlike, they're so ultra real. And then of course the biggest thing is cut to cut to cut to cut, everything looks the same because they are only shooting on, and like when you actually like break away from handheld, you get on a gimbal or a stabilizer or even tripods or monopods, you're opening yourself up to like very compressed focal lengths.
Yeah.
And I love having the in out. I like having that
It's different,
change in the
variety.
edit. And I don't like when I watch the films where I'm like, I can tell the person was on the same lens all day.
Yep.
I know people who do it. Like Forge of the North is a good example. He's pretty much on one or two lenses all day, all handheld. But he's so thoughtful about he doesn't view handheld as like, this is a cool thing. He goes like, I need to fix some of the problems with handheld shooting by how I approach shooting. And so you can overcome it.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's the same thing with like gimbal. It's like you run around with one lens, or you just run around without a plan. And what it is really is like unintentional or uninspired filmmaking, and that could be gimbal or handheld, where you're just like along for the ride, and you're not leaning into the way that you're shooting.
And maybe this is like just our opinion. I just tend to think like a flat film where everyone's shooting 35 mil the whole time. I notice it really a lot, and I don't like it. And I think that's a function of.
I think the
handheld shooting.
reason is because it's not intentional. It's because I don't want to switch my lens, or because this is how I get the most stable handheld, or whatever.
Yes.
It's not because I want this to be shot on a 35 millimeter lens, and I want this next shot on that too.
I have two thoughts when it comes to handheld shooting. Is one, the people's handheld shooting that I like the most oftentimes aren't using IBIS at all. They're using Blackmagic cameras, so it has a natural I think a much more natural feeling handheld shot, which is like a natural like.
Well, they have to like
sway.
lock themselves down too.
When you do IBIS, it's essentially, you're smoothing all that handheld motion out. It's almost like, I think you're right, Bobby. People do try to make it like, when I use it, personally, I am trying to kind of do like a mini parallax gimbal shot.
I'll do
20
that.
degree, a
But
20
I've seen
degree.
people who are like, I'm gonna like take 4 steps.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
like,
And I've tried to teach our guys.
like, I'm gonna do a slider across this whole.
your
table.
your rule, right? Tell them what your rule is, and then I'll hop into my second
My
point.
one-step rule.
Yeah, your one-step
Yeah.
rule.
There's just not a handheld or gimbal. There's just outside of a tracking shot, outside of like I'm following the couple as they hold hands. I just don't see any need for taking more than one step. Even that, like sometimes I'll just like get a wide stance and just shift my hips from one side to the other. Like you can get so much movement.
I
in
will
that.
say gimbals, sometimes you have to do push-ins for like epic ballrooms. And,
Yeah,
But-
that's true.
but-
Like I said, that's
but
a
with
tracking
handheld-
shot, though, I feel like basically.
But with handheld,
But-
well, yeah, it's true. For all intents and purposes,
Yeah.
it is. But with handheld shooting, I would agree, like, you can do, like, I have seen people who very intentionally walk with a subject and they really try to make it look, they're very good shooters.
Yeah.
You're moving into a level of, like,
But oftentimes when you
elite
But we
do
feel
that,
most people don't need to do
You-
that or can't. do
when
it
you're
successfully.
walking, I feel like you have to have a heavier rig. Most people just don't have a heavy enough rig to make it look natural. The second point I was going to bring up, and this is probably solving some of your issues, Jay, with handheld shooting, is moving your feet. Like if you are using a prime lens and doing handheld shots, you have to feel like you can get in there. I think
Get
a
in
lot
there.
of filmmakers feel like I'm going to stay 10 to 12 feet away from my subject all day because that's what I feel naturally comfortable with. And you have to, like, if you're going to do that, you have to move your feet and actually get close
Yeah, get in there.
and also get far away and feel like you're getting a bunch of different shots with the same lens and know what shots really make your lens sing.
And if you're
at
doing
certain
that,
lengths.
then you're being intentional.
Exactly.
and my opinion, 50 millimeter is the perfect focal length for handheld shooting.
Yeah,
because it's a little compressed. And you can back it up. I like 35 too. I think like you can do 85 during a portrait session and stuff. Like, but I want to see somebody who I personally want to see 3 focal lengths out of a handheld shooter. I don't want to see the same focal length all day. But I do agree with you. If you're on a 50 mil, you can probably get away with only shooting on a 50 mil because it's such a flexible lens.
But you should still be moving your feet.
But you have to move your feet.
Yeah.
At that point, you got to be in, you got to be out, because you can do intimate with a 50 mil, you can get wide with a 50 mil, like you can do a lot. But I would agree with you. Many people are not moving their feet enough.
So let's wrap this one up. So what I want to hear is people at home is what are some of the trends that you're seeing coming out? What are some of the trends that you love? What are some of the trends that you absolutely hate, can't stand? There's a bunch out there, and we want you to be a part of that conversation. Make sure you guys are checking out everything that Wedding Film School has going on, all of the interviews that we're going to be doing this week. We're going to be doing some more, the 3 of us. We're also going to be doing some with some guests this week as well. So
Hopefully.
excited to be.
People say yes.
Yeah, hopefully they do. They usually do.
They're already here.
Yeah. But make sure you're checking out the Facebook group, Wedding Film School. We have a lot of good conversations like this in there, maybe healthy debates every once in a while. And then you're checking us out on Instagram, YouTube, all the places that you can find podcasts and content like this. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode. Hopefully it's been helpful, and we'll see you on the next time here on Wedding Film School.